Welcome back, Truth Soldiers. We are about to look at some things that show you how connected the people are, the figures that have set out to hide the truth of creation with ridiculous lies that have been promoted, forced in our education standards, and they have people parroting the words of individuals who you're about to see are directly connected to one another and to the practices of Satanism and the demonic doctrines that came about through people like Aleister Crowley. And it's something that we shouldn't have to point out, but it's things that I didn't know until just now, like just within the last couple days. And I am mind blown that other people haven't made these connections. If they have, I haven't seen them, and maybe it is censored, kind of like we are now. But I want to go over these things because they are dark and it relates to people that I've already talked about in the past. Someone like Charles Lyell. We talk about this guy every year when we do our evolution unit. And this man, Charles Lyell, is considered to be the founding father of modern geology and the geologic column. And according to his own words in a letter that I found, his bias was to free the science from Moses. And this guy, I just now found out, was a Freemason at the Apollo University Lodge in the United Kingdom. And their symbol is literally the sun god Apollo right there. So this guy, 1700s to the 1800s, was doing some things to try and separate science from Moses, but it didn't end well for those magicians and sorcerers and wise men of Pharaoh. It's not going to end well for Mr. Charles Lyell when we go through all the connections that show you how these people are all a part of the same club, with him being in a secret society. And then the other guy who actually died the year that Charles Lyell was born, his name is James Hutton. He is considered the father of geology, not just modern geology like Lyell, but he's the father of geology, they say. Remember, the Messiah said, "Call no man father." Well, that's what they do in the false science realm. They name their people fathers of whatever bogus theory they create. And so this guy is called the father of geology, James Hutton, 1700s. That's when the Illuminati formed, 1776. But this guy was a part of one of the secret societies that formed with the Jesuits to make the Illuminati. And his discovery was made, guess where? At the hunting lodge of John Murray, the Duke of Athol. And so this guy was the Grand Master of the Antients Grand Lodge and the Grand Lodge of Scotland. So he's a master of two different lodges. And this is where our founding fathers of geology and all these things, these are the company they keep. People of the same secret societies. And then they give rise to people like Charles Darwin. Their theories of the old Earth are crucial because Darwin's going to come along. Right there, they're handing on the baton to this guy who is going to say that all life has a common ancestor. But Charles Darwin wasn't the first one to coin that concept. His grandfather, Erasmus Darwin, someone who was also in the same secret society at Canongate Lodge. Remember that specific lodge, Canongate Lodge. Does that sound familiar? It should, because James Hutton was the same lodge, the same guy, the one that says, yeah, the earth is old. Just like Charles Lyell. Charles Lyell also said, yeah, it appears aged. That was his reasoning for why it's old. It appears to be aged. Yeah. And so, Canongate Lodge, United Kingdom. Canongate Lodge, United Kingdom. He was also a fellow of the Royal Society, Mr. Erasmus Darwin. And his quote, I'm going to read it. Everyone gives Darwin credit for natural selection, but he is only speaking what has been handed down to him for a couple generations, maybe further. But his grandfather says that in the great length of time since the earth began to exist, would it be too bold to imagine that all warm-blooded animals have arisen from one living filament, possessing the faculty of continuing to improve by its own inherent activity, and of delivering down those improvements by generation to its posterity. And so this is survival of the fittest, natural selection, without giving it that actual definition. That's pretty much what it is. And so Erasmus Darwin passed that information on to, I'm sure, his son, who then passed it on to Charles Darwin. All three of them a part of the same Royal Society, even though they say Darwin wasn't a Mason or that there's no evidence of that. His sons were, his grandfather was, and he was a fellow of the Royal Society, which I didn't realize was so interconnected. But these people are working for the same purpose. And when you look at who else was in the Royal Society or fellows of the Royal Society, there's a bunch. And I just put a few up here that you guys would recognize. Isaac Newton, Mr. 1666 himself, and then the island boy, Stephen Hawkins, right there at his little device that's allegedly, I don't know, reading his mind and reading his eyes, speaking for him. And then you have Brian Cox and David Attenborough, I believe is his name, the ones that all promote billions of years. And that's how they get promoted into these societies. And I wondered if this was a secret society. And it tells you, no, it's not when you first Google it, but then you look further and it says that every fellow of the Royal Society shall make a solemn promise before the same not to discover directly or indirectly to any person not being of the society such observations, experiments, or other communications as shall be brought into the meetings of the same, and thereby the president or one of the vice presidents declared to be kept secret at the desire of the communicator. So they have to keep secrets. It is a secret society. If you're part of a society and you keep secrets, it's a secret society. So these people are connected. It's about to go a lot deeper. We have someone else that I came across that was also a fellow of the Royal Society. Because when you're talking about these people, you start getting into eugenics because evolution and eugenics go hand in hand. And one of the guys I came across that was also a part of that same Royal Society was a man named Francis Galton, the creator of the eugenics concept. Why did I find him? Because he's a cousin of Charles Darwin. So one does the evolution lie, the other one does the eugenics lie. Lies that you're about to see are demonic. We're going to look at their origin. And so eugenics, if you don't know what that is, that's the belief that we should improve the genetic quality of a human population by preventing the ones they deemed to be inferior people or races from reproducing while promoting the reproduction of the so-called superior races and genes. Okay? They used the word races. It was a racist thing. It still is. We're going to see that here in a little bit. But if you think about eugenics, you've probably heard of someone named Margaret Sanger. Look at her little hand sign she gives here. Look familiar? You're familiar with the Satanist Aleister Crowley? Yes, the same hand sign. And so she was doing that in a picture, and I thought, interesting. Maybe she's read his work. Well, when you read her ideas and you see the title of her journal that she had put out, guess what it was called? The Woman Rebel. No gods, no masters. Kind of reminds me of that no kings thing we just had. But she was really big on birth control and abortion, which when you go back and look at what the unclean spirits were teaching mankind in the book of Enoch, it tells us, or the fallen were teaching their children who became demons after they died. The fallen were teaching mankind, according to First Enoch, I believe, chapter 8, how to make weapons, beautifying your eyelids, godliness, godlessness, which is another word for atheism. They were promoting that back then, which is a big part of the scientific world. And then you have fornication, enchantments, root cutting, and I believe, I could be wrong, the book of Jasher expounds upon this, saying that they were mixing roots to make birth control. They were making these concoctions that would help the women be promiscuous and take part in number 4 here, fornication, without losing their figures. And then, if that's not bad enough, you have lawlessness, astrology, and then the smiting of infants in the womb, which is abortion. All of this stuff, like I said, it's demonic. We can see that in these biblical texts. It comes directly from the fallen to their offspring that are now unclean spirits. And so those unclean spirits, they have been in communication with mankind since after the flood. And the things they are telling these people are dark, and they are following their orders. And so in 1896, I found out that certain states passed laws requiring medical exams before issuing marriage licenses. Imagine that. You're going to get married, and they're like, we need to have you take an exam to see if you can even reproduce. If not, they're not going to approve your marriage. My goodness, I'm glad they didn't do that. They would not have let me marry my wife and have kids, probably. I'd have been one of the inferior people, you know. Maybe I have too much Native American ancestry or something. Who knows? They would have some reason to stop people. And it's always against our father's people. You saw that in Egypt when Moses was being born. You saw that when our Messiah was being born as well. The leaders trying to stop certain people from reproducing or just killing their young after they're born. And so Indiana was the first state to pass compulsory sterilization laws, meaning they're going to make you not be able to have children by force. And so that's what they were doing in 1907. And I thought that was over. I thought, this is ancient stuff. This is the early 1900s. I was born in the late 1900s, but I thought that stuff was gone before I got here. But as I'm reading about the eugenics, because of that guy who was Darwin's cousin, coined the term and, created, popularized that. Well, it lists some people who were big into that. W.E.B. Du Bois. I didn't know he was, but he was. You also had Theodore Roosevelt, people before my time, but interesting that they were supporting that. But Margaret Sanger is a prominent one. We're going to look at who she was influenced by. She was influenced by figures like Havelock Ellis. This guy, guess what? He went to King's College, a familiar college, because Francis Galton, the guy who founded eugenics, also went there. I'm telling you, it's one big club. They all go to the same clubs, the same colleges, from the same location back then. Usually it's the UK. And so right there, that guy. But Crowley, who influenced a lot of these people, I believe, because he was in, collaboration with demons, allegedly. And he believed in an elite group of superior beings. This is in alignment with eugenics, who had the right to live without law, or, as his counterfeit book of the law states, do as thou wilt. That's going to be their law. Just do whatever you want. And the rest of humanity, meanwhile, were to be slaves and serve these super beings' will. And he wrote kindness and consciousness and altruism. If you're not familiar with that word, that's basically doing good deeds to people without expecting anything in return. Giving to the poor would be an example of that. Those things to him, kindness, consciousness, or conscientiousness, and altruism, those are drawbacks to the progress of humanity, he says. Instead, the elite super beings should dominate the weak and less fit, exploit them, and if necessary, kill them. Compassion is the vice of kings, he would say. And Crowley writes, stamp down the wretched and the weak. And just look at this guy. Does he look like a physical specimen? This should be saying that. Like, look at those genes. I would hate to inherit those genes, okay? Stamp him out of the gene pool if you're wanting to produce these super beings. He was not one of them. He looks like the least fit person I've ever seen. And so there he is right there in his decrepit days doing some weird hand sign. Definitely not someone you'd want to get your genes from or your thoughts. And so that's his dark side right there. This guy, Mr. Aleister Crowley, living in the late 1800s to the mid 1900s. And guess what? He went to the same college as Francis Galton. Francis Galton didn't just go to King's College, he also went to Trinity College. So they went to the same university, the same one as Isaac Newton, who was also a fellow of the Royal Society. And they were both, Mr. Francis Galton and Aleister Crowley, from Warwickshire, England. Same hometown. Tight-knit community there. We're starting to see how connected these people are who have been influenced by the same powers of darkness. They have spread around the world. And the eugenics that began in the U.S. in 1909, I thought it was 1907. It says here 1909. I might be wrong in my memory there. But in 1909 is going on to this day. You heard that right. Eugenics, what we just read about from Aleister Crowley's demonic book, stamping out the weak. It's in effect to this very day. I didn't know that until this morning, because the article I first found, it said that it started in 1909 and lasted for 70 years. Well, saying that it lasted 70 years means that, it came to an end. Well, you have to look up, where is it legal to forcefully sterilize people in the U.S.? 31 states, including D.C. But back in the day, and probably to this day, California led the country in the number of sterilization procedures performed on men and women without their full knowledge and consent. Kind of like those aborted fetuses don't consent to that. The husbands can't consent to that. It's all about the women's body, not the body within them. that is 50% of the dads. But approximately, it says 20,000 sterilizations took place in state institutions. And here's an old map. So I'm sure the numbers are far greater now. But the ones with the stripes, those are places where the laws were in effect in 1935. So this is an old map, but it gives you the numbers. And California had 4 digits. Most of the other ones had 3 digits. Some had 2 digit numbers for deaths or sterilizations, I should say. But these here, yeah, this isn't even the abortion numbers. This is just sterilization numbers, which is worse than abortion because these people are not able to have any children, and so they can't have grandchildren and so on. So you're actually really controlling the populations by doing this. And that's what they are still doing that's legal to this day. And the people behind it, we've talked about how connected they are. One secret society that I didn't even know was involved in this, but now it makes sense when it comes to someone like Margaret Sanger. It says that she explored Rosicrucianism. And if you're not familiar with that secret society, it has been a long time since we talked about that. That goes back to the Georgia Guidestones. I live in Georgia. We got to see them right before they were blown up. But these things were built by the Freemasons, and that secret had gotten out. That's why they blew up. But they weren't just built by the Freemasons. The Freemasons were in partnership with this secret society right here, the Rosicrucians. How did I figure that out? Well, I didn't. Somebody else did. They found the letter that was the draft letter typed up that was going to be in the time capsule that was buried somewhere or to be buried somewhere near the Guidestones and taken out of the ground at a certain time. And so that little letter guiding people what to do in their age of reason after the population had been reduced to 500 million. Do the math, look at how many people that is, just kind of like look at the population now. That's a big reduction in size. And so their little map was going to guide you, and the direction said to call the Rosicrucian Society in Atlanta. So those people are involved with population control. That came to my attention in recent times. Now I'm finding out that Margaret Sanger was influenced by them. It's all starting to make sense. Population control is a huge part of their agenda. It is demonic. And like we said with Aleister Crowley, we just did a video, a little YouTube short about him and his song or his influence on David Bowie, who wrote the song Space Oddity that was then sung in outer space, allegedly, by Mr. Chris Hatfield. And you play it in reverse and it says Lucifer. And we did that and we put that out there. You guys can see that. I'm not going to cover that again. It's in a YouTube short. You can go look at our YouTube shorts. It's one of them. It's dark and it's sad to hear that. And I don't even like hearing it in the song. When you play it in reverse, you hear it. When you play it forward, you would never know. It sounds so innocent, but it's not. These people are obsessed with these dark arts and with people like Aleister Crowley and his so-called Book of the Law, which it says here through the reception of that book that Crowley proclaimed the arrival of a new stage in the spiritual evolution of humanity to be known as the Aeon of Horus. The primary precept of this new eon is the charge, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. When Paul was talking about this, he said there is a mystery of iniquity going on. Iniquity is lawlessness. It's the utter disregard for God's law. And so I know that by saying that you keep aspects of the law now that apply, people get all bent out of shape. But if you're saying it's done away with, you are agreeing with Mr. Crowley here. And then you have the words. I'll just let you listen to the words of one of those demons. I did not, when I read this, I felt instantly like, don't read any further. You've seen enough. These demons speak in ways that try to be seductive. They try to get you to think of them as nice, as gathering you up, like gathering you in my wings, like they're just these loving creatures, but they want sacrifice of the innocent. That's what they long for. That's what they want. And they also get joy in the crucifixion. And that's why Horus, this, the deity here with the hawk beak, says, with my hawk's beak, I peck at the eyes of Jesus as he hangs upon the cross. He didn't really do that, but that's what he's trying to give credit to himself for doing. I flap my wings in the face of Muhammad and blind him. So he's not even excluding the Muslims there. With my claws, I tear out the flesh of the Indian and the Buddhist, Mongol, and Din. These are people that are deceived by them anyways right here. These groups, why are they going after them? They don't care about them. I spit on your crapulous creeds. Let Mary inviolate be torn upon wheels. And I'm going to skip forward here. There's a lot of stuff in here. He says, despise also all cowards, professional soldiers who dare not fight, but play. All fools despise, but the keen and the proud. Remember, we have a whole month for pride. The royal and the lofty. The royal societies. Ye are brothers. As brothers fight ye. There is no law beyond do what thou wilt. So yeah, the royal societies. That's who the demons love. The royals. Right there in their own words. Very, very dark. All about being lawless. What else did he say? This is one. When we talk about biblical cosmology and people act like it's not important, here's what he says. Now you shall know that the chosen priest and apostle of infinite space, this is a demon allegedly, is the prince, priest, the beast. And in his woman called the scarlet woman is all power given. So who is their beast? According to their own words, infinite space. And in his woman called the scarlet woman is all power given. They shall gather my children into their fold. See, this is where they get seductive. My children. The Father has his children. They want to take as many people as they can and call them their children. They shall bring the glory of the stars into the hearts of men. And then he later says, since I am infinite space and infinite stars. It's a demonic doctrine. Can't say that enough, guys. It's demonic. And this is why the world wants you to become a superstar, make a wish upon a star, be a rock star, be a star student, watch Star Wars, Star Trek, get your name on a Hollywood star. Our Messiah tells us to take the narrow path. It says, enter ye in at the straight gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction, and many there be which go in thereat. Because straight is the gate and narrow is the way which leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it. There's a narrow path. What does the world want you to do? Make it big on Broadway. It's for a reason. Become a star on Broadway. And so they have their Broadway, their worldly wisdoms, their eugenics, their teachings of evolution, their false tree of life that we are going to continue to cut down. I'd like to do that now, but there is time ahead for that. I'm going to have to designate entire lessons for that. And when we speak at the convention, I'm going to do just that. And I'm going to try and bring the best evidence that not only ties these people together, but also shows how their lies of a common ancestor being down here, just like Darwin's grandfather popularized, and then Darwin went out and became famous for popularizing. We're going to break that apart with the Father's guidance. And so it's a lot of fun to do. You guys can help us out, and that's what Creation Standard is all about, creating true soldiers who know the truth, who can put it to the test and destroy these lies. We start up soon. I think we're about 14 days away. If you go to the website, you can scroll down to the bottom of the website and see the countdown. Here it is right here, 14 days, 7 hours, 38 minutes, and 4 seconds. It is going fast. And so right there, you can watch that along with us as you get excited about starting. If you aren't a part of this journey, you can go here and check it out. We do earth and life science. So we're destroying the old earth, the sun god model of the earth type of concepts, as well as evolution. And it creates a strong foundation for these children who are going to be sent out into this world, either to A, be a weapon of truth, or to be deceived. And we want them to be weapons of truth. Our Father, with his Holy Spirit, is waking up a generation of truth soldiers unlike anything I've ever seen. It is beautiful to see. And so the narrow path, they don't warn you about, but it is a beautiful path. You see the most beautiful things happening that our Father is doing, but it's a small number. Like it says, like our Messiah said, few find it. And so we are with the few. We are blessed. I don't expect this to get super huge for that reason. It's a few select individuals. And so check those classes out. You can also check out my brother's class. He is really working hard to put together some biblical history lessons that will also prove that our Father's words are true when it comes to prophecies that have been fulfilled. And he also teaches math. He has a math teaching background. You can check out those classes as well. And if you want to support this mission, guys, now would be a good time. You can check it out here. Let's see, support us, where you can go. And when you scroll around, you can see what all your support goes to and how you can support. If you want to support Michael, my brother, right here, I highly recommend doing that. He is having a lot going on as he transitions into ministry full time. It's not an easy transition, guys. It's a lot of work, and you are dependent on spirit-led people to support. So right there, you can support, and you can also send things to us at the PO box right here. And so lots of you have already supported. We are blessed because we have a large group of people who received free or reduced prices for their classes. And we would also like to be able to send them textbooks. Right now, we can't do that because we don't have the money to buy them ourselves and ship them, but support will help us be able to do just that. And so that is what I wanted to share today. There's something I'm missing, I'm sure. I'll try to come back and cover anything that I've missed at another time, but this stuff is important to share because people are being blinded. Hundreds of thousands, I mean, I would say millions of people are being blinded each day in our education system by outdated standards that have the worldly wisdom brought about by people like this, people that are in the royal societies, the ones that the demon said were their brothers, the royal people. It's their brothers, people that promote lies about the age of this earth. They are to go out and fight. And that's what they're doing. And we need to be out fighting as well, but fighting against their lies. And I just noticed something. I don't know. Look at the tie in the background right here. It's the same guy right there. They were standing together for this picture. I didn't realize that until just now. Wow, what are the chances? These are pictures I got from like the Royal Society list of people. It was listing prominent members, and they were standing there together. They must have been at that society that day, dressed up real nice and spiffy, dressed up real nice. So they were right there together. David Attenborough and Mr. Island Boy. And so that's it, guys. I know there's so much going on in these end times that we can talk about. The arrival of some alien ship coming up in September that they've been talking about on social media. We need to discuss that because that does play into the threat from above, which I know a lot of people think isn't going to happen now because they think the threat's going to be on the ground and we're going to be going after the kingdom and Gog and Magog. But the threat from above narrative is being pushed, and it's in prophecy. And I believe it's important to know where we are in time because you need to know what they're going to be pushing. And that is what I believe they're going to be continually pushing is this extraterrestrial threat. And so it's going to ramp up continually like we've been warning and like it has been. And so you guys are the best. Thank you for tuning in to this important lesson of how these people are connected when it comes to those who the world hails as our educational geniuses and heroes and, thinkers of our time. They're all parts of the same clubs and they keep secrets for a reason. And so that's it. You guys are beloved creations of the Most High, and we will see you next time.